If you watch my last video, this video is gonna be similar but with a twist. This video is about why I love the national parks as a believer. So some of you may have picked up on the fact that my wife and I are Christians, disciples, we're Bible-believing people. We're not Lutherans or Methodists or Baptists or anything like that. We just believe that the Bible is true. We've read it cover to cover. We think that it's self-evident. And as one person said, whoever made my heart wrote this book. And so that may not be you, and that's fine. I'm not going to try and convert anybody in this video or make a sales pitch or anything like that, but I want to share with you what I love about the national parks from a believer's perspective, and in some ways as a parent. So I believe that if you were to refine in a sentence what parenting really is, it's preparing children for the real world. Because kids grow up in a fake world. They grow up in a world where there's always money and there's always food and they didn't have to work for it, that kind of thing. And that's not real. As you get older, you have to work for it. And they grow up around people who like them, you know, their aunts and uncles and their grandparents, and mommy and daddy think they're amazing and special, and the world won't really think that way about them. And so as you parent, you're preparing children for the future. And there's a few facets to that. First of all, taking your kids to Disney does not prepare them for the future. Disney does everything it can to shield humans from the realities of the world. That's why every story ends with happily ever after. That's why the trash is taken out by employees underground so no one has to look at it. There's all sorts of things that Disney does to sort of make you feel like you're in a make-believe world. And I hate that crap. I want to introduce my children to the real world, which in and of itself is fascinating, and aside from being fascinating, prepares them for what is to come so that they will be strong, resilient, helpful people in the world. So one of the ways that the national parks do that is they expose the children to things that were and are and will be. So you may be the sort of parent who sees the importance of computers. And so you may want to buy your child a computer early on, as my uncle did for us kids 30 years ago. Or you might plan for your child to learn how to code because you see how important programming is. The thing is, computers were not around 100 years ago. And in some ways, they might not be around in 100 years because artificial intelligence and other things, the world is changing so fast that human beings sitting down and programming things is possibly a thing of the past. So religion and belief and all those things aside, if you're trying to prepare your kid for the future, you're going to have to choose, you know, what to teach them about. And things that you think may be vital to the future, like computers, may not be. And you may be wasting your time. Even cars. I mean, cars were basically not around 100 years ago for the common man. And in 100 years, they may not be. People may not be driving soon. We may be teleporting around, or spaceships, or who knows. And so if you take a zoomed out perspective of the world, some Christians believe the world is 6,000 to 8,000 years old. Other people believe it's millions of years old. Put that argument aside for a moment. There have been the stars and the sun and the moon and beaches and water and trees and animals and rocks since the beginning. As a believer in the garden, those things are still here now, and they will almost certainly be part of your child's future. And so teaching them about those things, how the world works, naturally speaking, you are teaching your children about something that they will have in their future, which cannot be said about paper and pencil, computers and stereos, cars, bicycles, etc., etc. And so you're making an investment that is almost sure to return. The other thing as a believer is it opens up a lot of opportunities for you to teach your kids about the realities of the world. In these parks, you will find people of every race speaking all sorts of different languages. You will see people who are dressed in ways you find modest and appropriate and ways you do not. You will hear language you agree with and language you do not. It is a real cross-section of society. And so if you want to raise your kid in a bubble, whatever you name that bubble, go for it. But bringing them out here exposes them to a wide variety of people. As a specific example, I pay my kids $1 each if they have the guts to go up to someone speaking a foreign language and say, "Excuse me, what language is that?" Because I want them to learn how to interact with people. I want them to value other people's culture and language. And considering that we're bilingual ourselves, it's often a cool talking point to get to know people. The children get spending money and sometimes trip money from grandparents. So they go up to merchants and make purchases on their own without any assistance from us. They learn how to be respectful. They learn how to negotiate. They learn how to, be courteous. All of these things, they're learning financial lessons. They're learning about the law of supply and demand. They're seeing the effects of capitalism and competition. Like in Sequoia National Park, firewood was $12 for a tiny little bundle. Here in Olympic, there's one road that we drive down to get to our campsite. There's 6 firewood vendors, and they're all like $4 a bundle. So you have all of these conversations with your kids, and you don't have to pull them out of a textbook or a classroom. They're happening right in front of you. So the people, the places, nature, economics, finance. The other thing is, your kids will ask you amazing questions while we're out here. Like, how did this stuff get here? And these questions can be very special, very deep, very scary. We had a conversation with our daughter the other day, that I won't go into, but she's asking some very deep questions and led to really good discussions that you ought to be having with your kids. The last thing that I'll say is it's a very economical way to vacation. Listen, I'm not out here because I can't afford Disney. I can afford Disney. I don't want Disney. I'm not out here because I can't afford resorts or hotels. That's not the reason I'm out here. If this cost as much as Disney or resorts, I would still be out here. This is the best way to vacation together. You fall asleep with one another in the tent at night. You wake up with one another. The kids come into your sleeping bag and cuddle with you. I mean, it is so sweet to share meals and bedtime and, wake time, all these things with your kids in this intimate setting. And it's cheap. It is so cheap. An annual pass for the national parks is $80, plus gasoline, plus a little bit of equipment and some reservations. I mean, per day, it's so inexpensive compared to any other form of vacationing. And so I don't do it because it costs less, but that certainly is a benefit for those with tighter budgets or more frugal wallets or whatever. So don't feel like this is some out of reach thing that you can't afford. You almost certainly, if you can afford vacation in any capacity, you can afford this vacation. So I would just encourage, in Deuteronomy it says, like, whether you are waking or sleeping or walking or sitting, talk to your children about the ways of the Lord. I'm paraphrasing. I should have looked it up first, but you get to do that out here. You get to just live life with your kids unplugged in this scenery and in this way that people have for hundreds and thousands of years. Not with electricity, not with natural gas and laundry. It's just so raw and simple and minimalistic, and it's like a calibration back to the way people have been living for a long time. So if any of that at all interests you, I encourage you to pursue it. And regardless of how you spend your vacations, raise your children right. Raise them in the Lord. Raise them to be resilient. Raise them to be righteous. Raise them to be courteous. And the views. The views are just amazing. Take care, everyone.